So welcome to Wednesday's Weekly, our weekly information session in collaboration with the voluntary sector and public sector partners. Today's session is Setting Your Sustainability Goals, and our host is Alison Brough, the Principal Environmental Manager for the Northern Region at Wilmott Dixon. Over to you, Alison.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for having me along today. So in terms of the agenda for today, and to give you a bit of an introduction about Wilmott Dixon, I'm going to give you an overview of Wilmott Dixon's sustainability strategy. Now, I recognise that we are a UK-wide construction company, and not necessarily all of this will be applicable to your organisations or your activities. But what I want to do is show you that even at our scale, some of the things that I'd suggest that you can do are exactly the same, and it's just literally applying it to the scale and to your organisation's activities. So I'll give you a whistle-stop tour of the strategy, then we'll go into a bit of what you can do and how we can make it applicable to you, and then options for support going forward for you in relation to environmental and sustainability management. So when Liz says from Wilmott Dixon North, the northern region covers from Anglesey in the west, right the way across to Scarborough in the east, down to probably sort of Doncaster, Sheffield and South Yorkshire, all the way up to the Scottish border. I've been with Wilmott Dixon for over 7 years now. In a previous life, I was an environmental consultant and worked across a range of different industrial sectors. So let's get going. So in 2020, 2021, because it got delayed a bit with there's a pandemic apparently, or something happened, but everything got juggled around a bit. We launched our Now or Never strategy. So that's our strategy that's going to take us through the next 10 years and how we are going to deal with the sustainability challenges that not only we as an organisation face, but also a lot of the issues that the planet is currently facing. So as I said, our strategy is set up till 2030, and we've split it into 3 themes. So there's brilliant buildings, which is the blue box. So that's all about the buildings that we build. So as a construction company, that's where our biggest impact is. Building lives is our social value element of the strategy. So that's about the work that we do in the local communities where we are working and where we have project sites. And then finally, Better Planet is more about the environmental aspects of our strategy. And that's probably the items and the topics that you will be most familiar with. So as I said, this is going to be a whistle-stop tour. But in terms of what we're looking at for brilliant buildings, we're looking at making sure our buildings going forward are net zero carbon in operation. And I'm going to explain that to you about what all that means. But it's probably net zero carbon is probably a term you've heard banded around both at government level and in different other organisations. We're also working on and making sure that any of our buildings and any major refurbishments that we do are designed to adapt to future climate scenarios. So with global warming and increasing temperatures and colder winters and wetter weather, we need to make sure our building structures can respond to and manage those changing climates and make sure the buildings are comfortable for their users. The next one is probably the biggest challenge that we're currently facing, in that by the end of 2040, we want to make sure our buildings are delivered with net zero embodied carbon. So as I say, I'm sorry for throwing all these terms at you, but embodied carbon is the carbon that's gone into making that brick or block or that sheet of plasterboard. So it's the energy and the power that's been used to make that product. And then finally, we're working with our supply chain to help them on the journey. So similar to the support that we'll offer you today, we're working with the supply chain partners, all our dry liners or our plumbers or our bricklayers or whoever it is, to support them and help them on that journey to be net zero carbon. So what is net zero carbon? What does this actually mean? So net zero operational carbon is all the operational energy that you use to run your building. So all the water you use, all the heating you use, all the electricity you use, you add all that up, and that is your energy requirement for that building. What we're trying to then do is say, right, so we know we use X amount, and then we want to balance that off with renewable energy. So any of that electricity coming into that building has come from a renewable source, and therefore it doesn't contain any carbon.
It's back. no sound now.
So that may be, we may then say to the people that we're building the project for, well, we'll put photovoltaics, we'll put solar panels on your roof, or we'll use alternative energy sources for you that don't involve carbon, and that's how we're going to power your building. Now, that might not be possible to do on the actual site, but we could do it off-site. So we may say, well, actually, we'll get all our electricity from a renewable source, and we'll speak to our energy supplier and see what we can do. And then the final bit is to offset any carbon. And it's just about having that balance and making sure it all balances up, knowing how much you use, and then understanding how you're going to source that. So I hope that's explained net zero carbon to you. And if that comes up in any of your questions that you get asked for tender submissions or funding. So as I say, so we're looking at reducing that energy use, maximizing the energy power supply, and then just measuring and verifying it. So just understanding, making sure that the two balance up and we can say it is net zero carbon. And then in terms of working with our supply chain, as you can see, when you look at the pie, Wilmott Dixon's energy or carbon of the pie is only 1%. The majority of our carbon comes from our supply chain, so the people we're working with, and that's why we've set ourselves a target of helping them get on that journey with us, because that's where the biggest opportunity is for us. The second part of the strategy, as I said, is to do with social value. So that's about the work that we do in our communities. So we just want to make sure that when we're working in our community, we understand who that community is, we understand what they need and what they want, and then we make sure that we have an impact and we can assess that impact and make sure it's been a high impact. We also then put social value into the business decisions that we make, so making sure that we consider who we're working with, who we're working for, and supporting other businesses. So that might be through the use of social enterprises. And then finally, we want to make sure that we support people. So we doing presentations like this, or the work that Rosie does in terms of going into schools and colleges and highlighting the opportunities to young people or older people or people from a variety of different backgrounds about the opportunities available for them in the community or in construction. And then also then offering those people careers within the sector. Finally is our Better Planet section of the strategy, and this is probably more relatable to your activities and what you can do. So we are looking at a number of different things, including how much water we use, how much carbon we use, and how much fuel we use, and how much waste we generate. So up until and ongoing at the moment, we are a zero carbon company, but currently we're doing that through offsetting. So currently we're buying carbon credits from organisations to help us offset our carbon. What our strategy is that we want to be zero carbon without doing that offsetting. We want to get that balance right and making sure that we're doing it through renewable supplies. So that's what I've just said, so we'll keep going. So how are we going to do that? So we are looking at business mileage reduction. So we're looking at the number of miles we travel. And I think the onset of the pandemic has helped us to reduce our business mileage by 40% since 2019. We're supporting our people within the business to move on to electric vehicles. We're looking at how we set up our sites. We're looking at trying to get rid of diesel on our sites. So unfortunately, unlike electric vehicles, electric diggers and dumper trucks and things haven't quite caught up yet. So that's going to be a longer term strategy. But then we're also making sure our sites get connected to electricity earlier rather than us having to rely on big puffy diesel generators. We're looking at how we can reduce the amount of waste we generate. Unfortunately, the construction processes that we carry out generate a lot of waste, but we're looking at ways of trying to eliminate that waste coming from site. And then if we do generate it, how we can reuse it or recycle it. So we're challenging sort of our supply chain and challenging our manufacturers to say, we don't want all that plastic, we don't want all that polystyrene. Can they provide us with reuse options rather than single-use options? So one of our lighting companies started sending us all our lights in big plastic crates instead of cardboard boxes and plastic film like you normally get. And then the light fittings were wrapped in blankets. And at the end, once we'd fitted them all, they can all, the plastic crates and the blankets can go back to the back to the supplier, and they can be reused and they can come on to our next project. So it's things like that we're looking at. We're also looking to half the volume of water we use on our projects. Now that is a big challenge, because unfortunately a lot of our projects, a lot of the activities that we carry out on site are very water intensive. But it's about understanding what quality of water we need for that activity, and could we use alternative sources. So there's a big drive for us to increase the use of rainwater harvesting, because you don't need to have perfect clean water to wash down the wheels of lorries or wash boots and things. So it's about matching up the type of water we need for the activity we're carrying out. The other part of the slide there says a term that you may not be familiar with, and that's about delivering environmental net gain. So that's all about making sure that when we arrive on a site, it's got a value, an ecological value, a biodiversity value. And it's about us understanding what that value is. So how many square meters of meadow is there? How many trees are there? How many wildflowers or hard standing is there? And that's all assessed and given a number. And we want to make sure that when we leave that site, that number is not getting less, that we're actually increasing that number. So we're adding biodiversity value, we're adding that sort of ecological value onto the site. So there's, as I said, we're looking to increase that value, measuring it before and looking to achieve that increase, understanding where we're using water and where we can use it somewhere else. Right, so this is the nitty gritty. This is the bit that hopefully will have the biggest impact for you. So I understand from conversations I've had with Liz, one of the common questions you're getting asked in your sector with regards to funding is, what does your environmental and sustainability management look like? What systems and things do you have in place? So my first question to you and challenge to you would be, have you got an environmental policy? Have you got a sustainability policy or something within your organisation? And the answer may well be no, but there's certainly a lot of templates available on the internet to get you started, and that's certainly we can help signpost you in terms of where you can go to get that if you haven't already got one. In terms of what that needs to include or what that looks like is you understanding what your risks are to the environment. So where are you having an impact on the environment? Is it through generating waste? Is it through you use a lot of fuel? Do you look to have a lot of mileage? Things like that. So it's just understanding where your risks are and your impacts are. But then also understanding what opportunities you have, what can you do that will have an impact and have a benefit back into either the community or to the environment. So then it's about documenting what those are and how you're going to manage them. So that can be very straightforward and simple, or, you know, if you're a larger organisation, then that might require a few more documents. But essentially, it's about understanding what you've got and what you can do, and then documenting how you're going to manage it. So then if we tie that back to sort of like, you know, the Wilmott Dixon strategy in terms of, so if your risk is, or your opportunity is in carbon, do you know how much electricity you use? Do you know how much fuel or gas you use? Can you start monitoring that and establishing what your baseline is, and then have a think about how you can reduce it? So for us, it's one of the things where we're doing is reducing our business mileage, because we're encouraging our people to use Teams calls instead of driving across to Leeds or up to Newcastle for meetings. So those little things, understanding where your energy tariff is. So if you're responsible for your energy bills, have you asked if you're on a renewable tariff, in terms of, and that will have an impact in terms of reducing your carbon footprint. So it's establishing your baseline, understanding what you're doing, and then looking at those simple measures to reduce it, and then just monitoring the impact you have going forwards, and the successes you have, and celebrating those successes. And very much in terms of waste, now I don't know if you're all generating waste or you're within a complex or a managed facility, but again, understanding how much waste you generate, and are there simple things that you can do to reduce it? So are you getting deliveries that come in lots of cardboard boxes and plastic, and could you speak to some of your suppliers and say, well, actually, we don't want all that cardboard. Could you do it differently? So as it says there, understand your key waste types and understand the source of them, and ask the question, can it be done differently? Often we found if we don't ask, then we don't get. And you'll sense a theme here, but it's exactly the same with water. Understanding how much water you use and what you use it for, and then saying, well, what can we do to reduce it? What other options are we doing? Are we good at leaving taps running? Do we have, we have issues with like push down taps, and if you push them down too hard, then they stay running for ages and ages. So some of our site teams have started putting like cable ties around the tap so you can't push them down as far, and therefore they don't run as long. So little things like that. But again, it's understanding where you're using the water and what the different options are for reducing it. There is help available. So there's a Manchester-based organisation called Be Net Zero. They offer a collaborative approach to helping businesses on their journey. So they will tie you up with other businesses who are on the same journey to offer you support. But also their website has a lot of good ideas of simple things that you can do to help reduce your carbon footprint. And then there's also the SME Climate Hub, who again is a UK government website which offers small businesses support to start on their net zero journey. So hopefully both of those websites would be of use to you, both at a local level, but then also the UK government level. That's me, Liz, in terms of if you've got any questions or answers, then we can go on to that bit. If there's
Brilliant. That's really, really informative, Alison. Obviously, there's loads to take in, isn't there? I should have said at the start, actually, in case people were furiously writing notes down, we will send, I've got the slide pack from Alison, and I'll send the slides out. So those website addresses for the B Zero Collective, you'll get those. So if you didn't write them down, if you didn't get them jotted down, don't worry, we'll send the slide pack out. I wonder if, and look, Alison's put her details there because there's actually a really lovely offer from Wilmott Dixon, which is at the end of the session today. If people feel that they would like a little bit more personalised support, a bit of individual support to understand some of the things that Alison's talked us through, and to think about maybe environmental policy. Alison has offered some one-to-one support. So if you're interested in having a bit more of a one-to-one session with Alison, again, Alison's details are there, and we'll send out the slide pack. But you can contact Alison after the end of the session or whenever, just to make contact and request a little bit of support. What I thought we'd do before we open to question and answers, if that's all right, Alison, if you stop sharing your screen, and then we can see everyone in their little titles. So we've got a bit more, there we go. You might need to turn your, what I'll do actually at this point is I'll stop recording, then people will be maybe happy to turn their cameras back on. So let's stop the recording first. She says, looking for the button. There we go. Are you sure I want to stop recording?